Hey, everybody, and welcome back to YouAreFreeTV. It is Wednesday, January 11th. So thrilled to be back with you. We are doing part 4 of the Cartel Babylon series here with Douglas Gabriel and Michael McKibben. Hi, guys. Welcome back.
Hey, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. And so Michael McKibben, of course, from Leader Technologies and now from Americans for Innovation. He invented the social media platform that everybody is now using, and went through a big legal battle regarding that. You can find him on AmericansForInnovation.com. And then we have Douglas Gabriel, former NSA agent and Trappist monk extraordinaire, an
That's a good
incredible thinker,
combination.
an incredible spiritual thinker and writer. And you can find his information on Gabriel's Horn at gab.com, linked below. And all right, so this series has been about how these fellows here and the Aim for Truth posse has discovered that there's a system of banker criminal cartel that began way back in Babylon, and that it is the creation of usury, the creation of human enslavement through usury. And as they just put it to me before we started this video, created what has become a religion of banking, okay, to enslave humanity and create this ever refined, ever centralized form of control that now is coming out in the, of course, the New World Order, you can call it. But basically, what is, I think, the pinnacle is this transhumanist technocracy that they're trying to push all of us into. And so we're going to go start ahead here with an introduction, just again to bring people, get your mindset on about Cartel Babylon. And you can refer back to our other 3 videos to get more of a history here. But this will just be a summary of what is Cartel Babylon and who are the Rodanites, Douglas.
Why, thank you, Free, for having us and hosting these conversations, because these conversations are ongoing because we keep discovering new things all the time. So I'll give a little summary of what we've come to. And one of the best monikers is the one you've given it, the Babylonian cartel, because really it isn't Hebrew, and it's not Babylonian, and it's not Assyrian, and it's not Sogdian, the people who controlled the Silk Road. And it's not Phoenician, even though we're going to today talk about Solomon and his connection to the Phoenicians and their banking. But when you look up banking, the first thing you find is that it started in Babylon, and it started, and these are the myths that we've worked with and now uncovered the truth of the matter. But they'll tell you that it started with 2 families, and that basically banking has always simply been essentially derivatives of Babylonian families that claim to be Jewish or Ashkenazi or Sephardic or many other types of Judaism, when in fact they are not. And it simply comes down to the fact that the Babylonians who were supposedly taken into captivity, into Babylon, the Hebrews, these Hebrews, they weren't slaves. They ran Babylon. They ran the banking system. They ran the tax system. They ran the land usage system. They ran the kingdom for the king instantaneously upon their arrival. Now, how is that possible unless they had already been there before? So some of the things that I will say today, Michael likes to stay a little bit more grounded, but some of the things I will say today, simply through just logical conclusion, you can derive the fact that banking not only started in Babylon, but it used the Hammurabi Code as a way to enforce it as basically a merchant with a sword, I like to call it, or commerce with aggressive commerce, or predatory economics, whatever you'd like to call it. But the banks were started then, and they started fractional banking. They started usury. They started taxes on a ferocious level, and they were all there worshiping Asmodeus, who was the demon that worked around the temple of Ishtar. And basically, the Hebrews were accused while they were in Babylon as being too involved in the prostitution temples of Ishtar and Inanna, too involved with coin, with wealth and the seeking of wealth, and basically prostitution, as it were, of all sorts. And this is what happened supposedly to these Babylonians during the second captivity, that were called Rodanites, which were assumed to be Hebrews and assumed to be in exile and that they were slaves. It looks as if they weren't slaves at all. It looks as if from the time of Solomon, they probably had moved there and used Solomon's gold as the foundation of Babylonian banking. It would make no other sense. How could a slave exiled group take control of the strongest kingdom of the time instantaneously unless they had already had their agents there long before? So in looking further, Michael and the miners have discovered the whole Solomon mysteries, which is so funny because that is what the Indiana Jones movie, the first one, was all about. It was supposed to be about King Solomon's mines because they had come and asked me to tell them about King Solomon's mines. So I told them all the different stories. And what they turned it into was just this, a Walt Disney version of a high-speed fight with Nazis kind of movies for 5 in a row. But we were actually trying to reveal some of these secrets a long time ago through those movies and working with Kathleen Kennedy, which I did for 5 years. And I'll work with Marcia Lucas on Star Wars. And some of these secrets that we discuss with you, Free, are in those movies. But what we try to do now is just get out the indictable evidence and bring it forward and show that all this historic research that we're doing comes into today's world. So much so that the very people who you see their faces on the news the most are directly connected to this line that you have so appropriately called the Babylonian cabal or cartel, or all the different names, that wonderful names you've given it, because that is exactly what it is. And they worship Mammon, and that's why it is a religion. And the reason that everyone associates pedophilia and sex rituals and the lust and the anger and warmongering and all this stuff with it, because those are the 7 deadly sins. That is who, as we're going to find out today, Solomon ended up worshiping, because he had 700 wives and 300 concubines, and he opened temples for all of them. And he was basically following in the footsteps of King Hiram I of Tyre, who was one of the first bankers, one of the first people to coin gold. And this then leads us to the Solomon's gold mines and why Solomon had all of the gold. Well, it's because, guess what? That same gold is still held by the same people. It's in the city of London, and it's in the Rothschild owned and operated gold bullion vault. Matter of fact, Michael made me have to admit, and it is true, that some of the gold from Solomon, which was of course stole by the Assyrians and then stole by the Babylonians and then put onto the, all the way that it goes around, it's still the same gold. They just melt it down. So literally the Solomon's gold, we're not only going to tell you where it is today, and we're not going to tell you it's in Ophir, and we're not going to tell you it's in Tarshish. We're going to tell you exactly where it is, and the fact that the same people with the same motivations for 4,000 years through their banking dynasty families have kept up this evil, which has perpetrated what we see is the 7 deadly sins manifesting all around us today.
That's quite the summary. Wow. Yes, and so this is where we get this religion for banking, right? This is basically to create the biggest monopoly. I mean, you could say known to man, but it's pretty much covers the spectrum of the timeline that we know of as post-flood history, or whatever you'd call it. And so, and it's the complete domination through thousands of years is what you're talking about. And that the cartel moved across, intermarrying these families across everywhere across the world here, but especially up through the Middle East, Europe, etc., into the edges of Asia, and basically creating these Ponzi schemes wherever they went, and using the industry of sin wherever they went to make enormous amounts of wealth, including human slavery, sexual slavery, the debauched, basically creating spy networks, because through the cover, the hiddenness of these debauched places, they would have the privacy to conduct their deals in secret, right? And also get their information, their intel, spread that web bigger and bigger, creating a larger and larger net, or larger and larger spider's web with them at the center. And so I want to hear more about this Solomon's mines. I'm hoping and I want you to jump in, if you would, Michael, and kind of give the perspective. What's the perspective here religiously versus what we're dealing with as Christians in the world fighting this
yeah,
evil.
when and I was taught as a young Christian that you give people the benefit of the doubt, and you allow them to conduct themselves in a way and that they choose to do the right thing or the wrong thing, and then if they do the wrong thing, then you deal with it. The problem we have as believers in Christ is that this puts us at a permanent disadvantage, because what we're dealing with these Babylonian Rodanites is truly a global banking cult. That's a religion, and that's the way they see themselves. It comes out of Babylon. They hide behind Judaism because it's useful to them, but they're not Jews, and they practice a religion that involves, as you've said, child sacrifice, drug smuggling, human slavery, whatever magnifies their opportunities in trade. And look, we see under Obama. Look at that Trans-Pacific Partnership, and this is the way these guys operate. They're merchant banker slave holders who will ally with anyone that will allow them to secretly control the trade anywhere in the world. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at a pure religion. It's not alongside, it's not separate from Islam, Judaism, Christianity. It is its own religion, and we have some examples of that in the false messiahs of the 16 and 1700s in Europe, where Sabbatai Tzvi proclaimed himself a Jewish messiah, and he created a huge following. And among the things he advocated was the fact that, okay, if you're one of our Jews living anywhere in the world, it's okay for you to basically proclaim that you're Muslim or that you're Christian or that you're Jewish. It's okay. Just lie. And then secretly you can practice our religion. And then 100 years later, a partner of Mayor Amschel Rothschild by the name of Jacob Frank continued this and refined it and took the gold money that had been bequeathed by these Babylonian Rodanites to the Rothschilds to extend that whole religion and basically say, in fact, he became a Roman Catholic when he was in Poland. But his followers were secretly practicing this cult. So if we move forward to today, and we've all heard these stories about various people in power participating in these religious cultic practices where witchcraft is involved, and even human sacrifice. We've heard about Bohemian Grove, and we've always been told that that was a mock sacrifice. But who does that? Who pretends to burn a little child as a part of their practice? Well, now we can see what's going on. This was their religion. This is their religion. They're practicing the Jacob Frankist admonition to pretend to be something else, to pretend to be Christian, pretend to be Muslim or Jewish, in order to gain the advantage. And when in fact they're not, and now we can see this coming out. So we are fighting. We are being challenged by a demonic religion that's 4,000 years old, that started in Babylon, and they embraced, as Douglas said, all the ancient religions and continue to embrace them, and which we now know, because they're demons, they promote the 7 deadly sins, and that is their advantage. They are promoting things that we would never assume that human beings would promote as a mechanism for maintaining their power. And with that, they have a huge advantage, as we can see. For 4,000 years, they have been plying the Solomon's gold as a basis for their currency manipulation, for rewarding their insiders, as you said, a Ponzi scheme. And this has worked very well for them. So they take control of propaganda so that the truths about their existence never really make it to the public, or if they do, they're buried. And then we see this in spades in 1902, moving forward with the British Pilgrim Society, where Andrew Carnegie, J.P. Morgan, Rockefeller, John Rockefeller, and before them Peabody, the Rothschilds, they were all about taking control of all the means of communications in the world, and then making sure that they control the propaganda messages that come out. Hence, we have the lamestream media today, which only tells stories that these guys want to be told, and everything else is suppressed. And so that's why I'm involved in this, because I invented in the 1990s, I rebuilt AT&T's email system in the mid-90s. Little did I know that AT&T is at the belly of this beast in terms of modern communication related to banking. But I rebuilt their system, and then as an outgrowth of that, I decided to go off the grid, redo the way collaboration works in the internet space, and then what we came out with is now known as social networking. So that was my introduction into this group, because then we saw the judicial corruption, which protected Facebook, who we had sued in 2008. And then as we have investigated since then, we have discovered that Facebook is only a piece of this story. It's much bigger, and in fact encompasses all of social communications throughout the world. And these guys took control of it, which they had been doing, by the way, for 4,000 years. When we go back and look at the Silk Road, one of the things that these Radhanites were in charge of was the spy networks and the communication networks along the Silk Road. So, okay, the communication was slower, but it was still no less heinous in the way they used their Ponzi schemes to make sure they always, the house always won in all these banking situations. So we see something that's advanced in terms of what they use in their communication, whether it was people riding camels, or whether it was Pony Express or Morse code or telegraph or wireless technology from Nikola Tesla, to AT&T's communication system, to our invention of social media. It doesn't change the underlying objective of what they're up to. They're up to control world markets for their banking cartel, and they have a religion that they will take advantage of any other religion in order to make sure they survive and stay on top.
Excellent, excellent. So well said. Thank you. And, we find that as they move forward here into this, and it's satanic with the end game of complete annihilation. It leads ultimately to death. And it's a necrophilic attachment, obsession of complete domination and control. Very, very, very extreme control freak people.
Well,
that
think of this,
also,
if I could interrupt, think of this mentality. You used the word pinnacle earlier. And think about the Tower of Babel. And if we think about the Tower of Babel, then more than just this nice story from 4,000 years ago, and it's not relevant to us today. But what if we are seeing in the story of the Tower of Babel a mentality of a group of human beings that are intent on controlling their fellow human beings in perpetuity by building this one language, which is what they were up to. One world government, one language. If they control that, they control the world. And what we're seeing in these Babylonian Radhanites is a blood family that is 4,000 years old, is Babylonian at heart, is Persian. It's not Jewish, it's not European. As Douglas said, it's more Sogdian, which was an ancient control of the Silk Road, which eventually these Babylonians took over. And what we're seeing in the Sogdian archaeology is we're seeing figures of faces of these Sogdians that looks amazingly like an Ashkenazi Jew today. And that's because what we learned later is that the Ashkenazi Jew was just a rebranding of the Babylonian Radhanites. It wasn't a thing. It wasn't a blood thing. It was the way the bankers moved into Europe with their cult in order to take over Europe.
Yes, yes. As they move, it's interesting how you said about the one language, and I just want to, and then I want to bring Douglas in here on this as well. That Yuval, Noah Yuval Harari, that Klaus Schwab, his right hand mystic boy, transhumanist. They're literally.
Mystic boy.
Well,
That's
mystic
good.
boy in the sense of like, if their new religion is this AI transhumanism, and they want to, gut us of our connection to God and our connection to critical thinking, and reshape us into this completely mediated battery for Satan. That's all they want us to be. And so he recently came out and
Battery for Satan.
I mean, literally,
That's a good one.
that's all they want. They want us for. Other than that, they don't want us. They just want to exterminate. It's like they're doing so well right now with the jabs, with everyone dropping dead worldwide. And gene editing is so important in their end game here. But what we see with Yuval Harari and his extreme transhumanism, and he's a gay Jewish man, Israeli, and he's saying that that we have to that governments need to intervene to retrain humans how to think and be in order to insert them into the metaverse so that they can be part of this future AI run life where basically everything that you buy, sell, get, do are given through your metaversal labor, okay, is going to come through the metaverse, and you're going to have to retrain them from basically birth and infancy of what reality is, meaning reality is this synthetic satanic simulation. And so they're destroying, cultures worldwide. They're the homogenization of everything, the Chrislam, they're getting rid of Pope Francis. They got rid of Ratzinger. He was trying to expose what was going on. Pope Francis looks like he's on his way out pretty soon here. And Cardinal Pell just died as well, supposedly writing an expose about what was going on in the Vatican. We had Ratzinger saying, I think the Antichrist is going to come from within the church, right? That the unification, right? The what do they call it? The singularity is what they're after. And, I wanted to bring you in about that, Douglas, because I know you have a lot of thoughts around some of these deeper metaphysical issues. And, what do you think is their metaphysical endgame in this? Okay, because we know they're just parasitic suckers and with total, disgusting behavior. But what else? What is their point?
Slavery. And slavery that they can cull the herd anytime they want because of their predatory economics. So if their economic numbers don't work out, then they may have to kill some more billions of people. But the problem is that the pharmaceutical World War III has never been effective. We're in round 20 of it or so, since the day that they started giving us these medical interventions without our permission. And basically, this is what Pope Francis wants. Pope Francis has completely destroyed the Catholic Church, and he's implanted Jesuits, not only in the Knights of Malta, but everywhere throughout the Jesuits, and the Curia is now almost all Jesuit. So basically, you have a Pope writing encyclicals, the Word of God, infallible words of God, that conflict with everything, every doctrine, every dogma that the Catholic Church has ever had. Mm-hmm. But you see, this is the time for that. And he knows that. He's playing the apocalyptic Jesuit game because they believe in apocalyptic theology. They want the end to come now. It's like the Sabbateans and the Frankists. The reason they so easily recognize someone declaring themselves to be a Messiah is because that means that it's happening now in my lifetime. So the rapture is going to come, the Messiah is going to come, the next transformation is going to come without me having to die and without me having to do any effort. This is just the simplest of ridiculous materialism, spiritual materialism from ignorant people. Mm-hmm. So we see this in all the different religions, but, it's the same obfuscation that both of you have made reference to, which is now we call it the narrative, or we call it propaganda. If you ask a Hebrew who's the wisest Hebrew of all times, they will say Solomon. And then and then when you hand them the 3 books, the greater and the lesser keys of Solomon and Solomon's statement, and they look at them and see that it's all demon worship attributed to Solomon, they're going to hesitate for a second. And then when you start handing them the tales from the Zohar, which are their documents, the Sephardic documents at least, or if you hand them any of the propaganda narrative about Solomon, you're going to hear that he was one of the greatest. No, here's how you know, because we've said it now 3 or 4 times, and I don't usually go into this, but I'm going to today. When I talk about the 7 deadly sins, okay, let's take Klaus Schwab. We're going to take 3 people. We're going to take Elon Musk, Klaus Schwab, and Bill Gates. And you tell me if they are being controlled by the demons of the 7 deadly sins. First off, let's start off with envy, because envy is the one that people usually forget. That's Leviathan. Envy drives our entire materialistic world. Almost all of our science is about envy. Everything is about envy. And then you have Asmodeus, that's lust. Well, look at Solomon and his lust, but look at the lust of these people for whatever it is that they want: more power, more control, more money, more industry, more globalism, or whatever. Okay, well, that's, apply that to all 3 of these people we're thinking about. And then how about the Luciferic pride? I wonder, does Klaus Schwab have any pride in him? I mean, do you think Lucifer is happy to live in the home of Klaus Schwab's imaginary legend of himself? Okay, yeah, I'm afraid they're meeting there now. Let's remember that Solomon himself was the father. He was the king of merchants. He was literally, he worshipped mammon. He worshipped greed. He worshipped money. And as Michael will tell you, he'll always make reference to this: give to Caesar what is Caesar's and give to God what is God's. In other words, you can't love 2 masters at once. You love either mammon or you love God, one or the other, clear as a bell. And then there is the gluttony, Beelzebub. Well, Beelzebub and gluttony, look at these people. They are the incarnation of gluttony. And then the last one that people might not say they are part of is pure Satanism, though they're accused of it all the time. But really, Satan is wrath. Satan is anger. So if you are killing people with medical interventions, that's wrath. That's anger. That's worse, not even wrath. That's just human anger. And if you're trying to wipe out a bunch of people because the earth is overpopulated, the only cause you have for that is true anger, that you are luciferically above those people, and that your gluttony and your envy and your lust and your greed then lead to what they have all at the top. The top people aren't thinkers. They have slothful minds. So Belphegor is who really rules these people. I would love to get in a debate with any one of the 3 idiots I just mentioned, because I would demonstrate that they have a very low intelligence and that they are simply the children of rich people who were failed, and so they were given over for brainwashing. And unfortunately, in all 3 of the cases I've mentioned, their brains were washed with too much bleach.
Excellent summary. And it's so true that exactly the last part, everything you just said was amazing. But the last part about that, these people aren't intelligent people for the most part. They are derivative, and they're thieves, is what they are. They're thieves, and they're liars. So they're good at manipulation and deceit and stealing, and that's basically it. They have brilliant minds for manipulation, really, and creating stories. And
And I think one of the things we have to realize is it's not really their brains at work here. It is the demon that controls them. And that's the thing that's been so fascinating studying 4,000 years of these people, is there's nothing new that they weren't doing 4,000 years ago. They're still doing it. It's just different people are doing it for them. This is a mind that's doing this. This is not an individual sitting in some tea shop in London doing this. This is way beyond any human's capability of organizing. We're dealing with the demons here, and that's what we're learning. Who would assume that when you're looking at this information from scratch? I mean, for years I looked at this stuff and I said, it can't be that. And yet, as that was said, Jesus said, you can't serve God and mammon. And he was being literal. Mammon was the god of the Babylonian banking cartel religion. And
Well,
Jesus knew that.
everything that is Christian, everything that Jesus taught is the breaking up of this exact thing that you've just spent 30 minutes
Exactly.
describing. And that love is the only real thing, the only enduring thing. The rest is window dressing, and usually leads to badness. You stick with love and you stick with God, and you're good to go. And obedience to God is the only salvation. It's the only freedom you can have through obeying God. And this lust for power, thinking you're free by further fragmenting off from God, just always leads to destruction and death and just torture. But I want to just bring to everyone's attention, we have next week, of course, all of these people that are at at this top of this cartel Babylon in their own minds. They're great in their own minds. They're going to be, of course, at Davos next week, and that is from the 16th to the 19th. And they're going to be planning how to create our demise, to further consolidate how to get more out of us with giving less, to create more scarcity while extracting as much as they can, and to basically give us the magic beans approach to how we're going to go forward here with putting ourselves into greater and greater degrees of slavery through this metaverse system, through this really, the biggest dangers we have here is this transhumanist technocracy, and that they're using that platform and this obsession with kind of their saviors are the engineers, right? And that's why people like Elon Musk are held up as these incredible people, because they want to flatten anything that's in their way just to progress with absolute material scientism, right? And it's just for their own aggrandizement, just like Lucifer, to become bigger and bigger in their own thoughts of who they are. You can't become God by inventing things, people.
Well, you mentioned Davos,
Yes.
and I suppose most people know Davos is in Switzerland. And right over the mountain is the site of the Abyss family, which is Anthony Fauci's family. Just over the mountain in Davos, and then a couple hundred miles to the west is Zurich, where the Schwab family made their fortunes. And so what we're seeing here, and I'm not going to go into Elon Musk too much yet, but what we're seeing is that Elon Musk's family is firmly embedded in the exact same demon in Switzerland. I think what we're seeing here is that Switzerland was occupied by a very senior demon, which we think is controlled out of the city of London. But this demon is very strong and resides in Switzerland. And what we're learning from the very obfuscated family background of Elon Musk is that on his mother's side, he is related to none other than H.R. Haldeman, who was the chief of staff for Richard Nixon. And the Haldeman family came from the canton of Bern, Switzerland, which is the very location where the Office of Strategic Services during World War II, you've probably heard of Wild Bill Donovan, was running the OSS, the precursor to the CIA, out of Bern, which was just a long walk from where Elon Musk's family comes from. And so what we're now seeing is this demon that, I mean, think about it. When you were studying World War II history, and you see all the countries involved in that war, didn't you think it was odd that Switzerland was neutral? And in a world war, Switzerland was neutral. How did that happen? That didn't happen because of some human being. That happened because some demon was protecting Switzerland for some reason. And as we believe, the gold of Solomon was housed there. They were stealing the gold from Germany and Japan and housing it in the Bank for International Settlements in Zurich. And it was Zurich or Bern? I can't remember.
Well,
Douglas, which one?
Bern is the headquarters, but the gold is at the end of the airport in Zurich.
There you go. And then we see these relationships between that. See, everybody's focused on the World Economic Forum. That's wrong. You've got to focus on the City of London. And I think we've got to start calling this out now. It's the City of London that's driving this bus.
Well, it's if you don't mind me jumping in here,
Sure.
it's you mentioned the gold. The largest amount of gold in the world, which is more than all of the gold and all of the reserves of all the countries in the world and their central banks and otherwise, is in Zurich in numbered bullion accounts. Because when we busted them for having numbered banking accounts, they went to gold bullion. But that bullion had been sitting there, as Mike just mentioned, from the Bank for International Settlement, from the time that the Germans had put it there, and all the European countries put their gold into the BIS, and they didn't get a lot of it back. As a matter of fact, they had to recently, in the last 5 years, so they fought to get some of the gold back.
They got very little.
They got very little. We can go into that, but that's a different story altogether. So the point is that the gold that Solomon gathered together was more gold than anyone had ever seen in history. As a matter of fact, he's worked with Hiram I of Tyre. Now, let me explain Tyre. Tyre is a Phoenician city, a city-state. Tyre, Sidon, and Byblos, and Arwat were city-states. They were the model upon which the Venetian city-states were created, which then became how European banking took control of all the monarchies in Europe. But anyway, the city-states, Hiram was the king of them, and he was considered to be, on some accounts in the Bible, a cherubim, and on other accounts, a fallen angel. He literally was the one who gave Solomon the supposed green colored chalice that was used at the Last Supper with Jesus Christ, because Joseph of Arimathea brought it there because he was part of the Sanhedrin. But the point is that King Hiram I and his builder, Hiram of Tyre, or Hiram of Biff, he was what's called an artificer. He built the buildings. Whoever built the buildings had to know the great secrets, and they had to know how to work with metals. And so when Solomon learned from King Hiram of Tyre, who was considered literally Lucifer fallen to heaven in some cases, or Satan himself incarnated, Solomon then became a banker. And we know this because literally in the Bible says that he had so much gold that he wouldn't let anything silver be around him, because he only wanted everything gold. Everything in the temple was gold. That was 2,000 tons of gold in just the temple, and that isn't the vessels. And then all the vessels, we don't know how much that was. But at one point, he and Hiram of Tyre went off somewhere where it took them 3 years to return, which could only be either India or around the tip of Africa. So they came back with 2 boats with a total of 32 tons. That's way more than America has, okay, right now in our reserves. But anyway, so all this gold came to him, but he didn't actually mint any coins. But remember, when he built the temple, it was against God's word, and that was one of the things that he was condemned for, because the Hebrews weren't supposed to have a permanent temple built of stone. It was supposed to be made of a tent so that they could always move with the Spirit of God. I could go into great descriptions of that, but when you built the temple, it killed it. But then what did he do? He controlled the priesthood, the Levites, and everyone had to come there and pay a tax. Oh, because he learned that from Hiram of Tyre. And everyone had to come and make offerings each year, and they had to change their coinage to the temple coins. And we've talked about the temple coins being the beginning of all currency, and they should have never left the temple. But when they left the temple, then they became basically money that could be used for buying things. And this became the evil. This was Solomon's evil. But then we know that he got 666 talents of gold each year, which is tons more. So what did he do with all the gold? My speculation here today, which I promised I would give to you today, I'm going to give you the big revelation. The big revelation is I didn't give the correct answer to Kathleen Kennedy of where the gold was.
Wow, this is a big event.
I know. The gold really went from Solomon straight to the Hebrews that he had sent to Babylon, because Babylon was the going culture at the time. He was learning everything from the Phoenicians he heard, who had been around since 1500 BC. He was around 900 BC, and he said, I know where it's going. And so he saw that the Assyrians eventually would be conquered by the Babylonians. So he sent his gold to start the first banks of the Rodanites in Babylon. And this could be the only place that they would have enough money to create these banking families that would be able to stand behind currency. And that's the same trick used by our mint, Fort Knox, even though no longer gold-backed American dollars. And that's what's supporting the English pound. And the bank, I mean, the vault that holds them is owned by the Rothschilds. It's called the Gold Bullion Vault. And that's the Bank of England. And then the bank in Zurich, every place the gold is amassed, fantastic evil comes to exist, and the seven deadly sins moves in, and the people get basically sucked in by them because they start to think that they are all that through their pride and envy and their lust and their gluttony and their hatred and their lust and their gluttony and their laziness, the sloth. That's the one that always cracks me up. Show me an intelligent Rothschild. Show me Bill Gates is an idiot. He can't even write code. Elon Musk is basically a very low IQ person who is impersonating someone who's one of these cardboard cutout geniuses that we're supposed to all worship in the new worship of science, which supports the continuing worship of the seven deadly sins, and particularly through Mammon, because all science is controlled. Basically, the research proves whatever they're paid to prove. It's as simple as that. Money controls science, and science controls the world. And therefore, the bankers, if they can control the scientists, well, look at what just happened with the...
Throw the attorneys in there, too.
Well, the attorneys are just the scum of the earth that always follow behind the people with the money, you see, because, they wish to be, they envy those people who have all the money. But remember, Solomon was totally a worshiper of demons. He worshipped Mammon. It says right in the Bible. It says that his problem was that he had too much love for coin, but he didn't print any money. So where did the money go? The money went behind the banks that moved to Babylon because he saw what was happening with the Assyrians taking over the Phoenicians and taking over the land that David had claimed all the way to the Euphrates in his land. So Solomon saw the picture of what was coming. So I am suggesting that the very gold of Solomon's mines, which we now know come from Great Zimbabwe and Rhodesia and Ghana, and that all of it was moved to Babylon. And where did it move? It followed when the Babylonian Radanites took over for the Sogdian Silk Road. It moved into the Western Turkish Kagan, which people will then call the Khazarian Mafia. It's not the Khazarian Mafia, it's the Radanites. And then they moved into Europe, and we've described how that happened in great detail. And so basically we have figured out literally the movement of Solomon's gold over the years to be the assets backing fractional banking.
Yep.
Wow. That's quite the revelation. That's amazing. And it makes, it's one of those like, of course, and it makes so much sense, right? Once you figure it out.
Isn't that the way of things?
When truth rings true, it feels that, it becomes like it's like its own self-evident, right? And that's an incredible, incredible revelation, Douglas. Wow. I'm kind of blown away. I have to like process it. But I, and it's interesting like that, by having those resources, the resources of Solomon, that's what allowed to create the usury system then probably because they had that, and that power, my goodness, to then of course create more wealth out of thin air. Right.
Yeah. So as long as Solomon is giving the money out or the gold out to the merchants of the world, he's wise. I mean, look at the way these money guys in Forbes and Money Magazine and on CNBC, look at how they praise the guys who have the cash. Oh, they're wise. They just know how to do it. And yet, all they're doing is Ponzi scheme, and they know they're making the scheme. So, of course, they're wise. Yeah, they're wise to their own sin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. Sorry, go ahead, Douglas. Yeah,
but they're not inventive. You see, Elon Musk hasn't invented anything. If you look at the only code he ever wrote, it was then rejected by the company who bought his company. Okay. Nothing he's ever done has actually been real. Every speck of it has been a fraud, but he's been used by In-Q-Tel. As a matter of fact, when he started SpaceX, his idea, his stupid idea, because I swear he has an IQ below 90. I'm ready to put a nickel or a dime on that bet. They went to Ukraine to get missiles that had been used during the Cold War that had been not deregulated, but dismantled. And he tried that 3 times and he failed, and he spent $100 million starting SpaceX, which was a guaranteed contract from the military before he started, by the way. Though he'd never built a missile in his life, they guaranteed the contracts. The first contract was like $5 billion, okay? And now it's up in the, I was looking up the totals today for SpaceX, SpaceLink, for all that has basically been US taxpayer dollars given to Elon Musk. Let's remember that most of the things he's ever done were supported by the US federal government as a monopoly. And they were already created by In-Q-Tel. All the SpaceX stuff is In-Q-Tel. That is not him. He has nothing to do with it. Listen to him speak. He doesn't even know what's up there. And remember, everything he's done from his boring company, and I wanted to just say that because it sounds so wonderful, his tunnel boring company called Boring. He is so boring to me that if someone believed that he was a genius, then I don't even want to barely speak with them again.
Oh, it's
about
tough talking
anything
about.
that has any intelligence to it, because you can't have any intelligence and believe Elon Musk is the hero, the messiah of technology, come to save free speech. If you believe that, then really conversation kind of ends there.
Well, I mean, since we've started talking about these facts, I think I've had more pushback and anger from people on this subject of who Elon Musk is than any other subject. And that's curious, because then, why are you getting angry about a fact? And by the way, I want to add to your In-Q-Tel part of the story on SpaceX. What we're discovering now is that his father and grandfather were involved in a De Beers emerald mine in Zambia, and the story goes that his father was given a half share interest in 50% of an emerald mine in Zambia. Now, if you actually dig into that, you realize that the Zambian government owns half of all the mining rights in everything, and the emerald mine that they're referring to is a closed mine. Nobody can go there. It's no doubt military controlled. And what we're just discovering is that it has always been owned by the De Beers company, and that his grandfather was stationed there during World War II. And that's how the relationship with the Rothschilds and De Beers started. And that out of that mine are some of the biggest emeralds and also diamonds. It was called the Premier Mines. And out of there are some of the largest diamonds in the world. And so what is being described in the current business documents of that mine and its many progeny with different names is that this company is heavily invested in U.S. treasuries, by the way, heavily. So there you go. That's the tie between all of Musk's money and In-Q-Tel comes through Rothschild in the City of London.
And most of his projects are fantastic failures. And if
Yeah.
all you have to do is read the Wikipedia to think that people have put him up as the new wonderful technocrat who can run our country as the president. I mean, to me, it's just shocking. Let's look at his Mars debacle. His Falcon 9 raised that now has a contract for I forget, $10-20 billion to basically bring all the stuff to Mars. So what happened to his Mars launch? You won't hear a word about it. It's right now in the asteroid belt. It never got anywhere near Mars. It's gone around the sun 2.6 times, and it will eventually, in a few million years, fall back to the Earth. This is the man we're talking about. Let's remember his first 3 missiles were complete failures.
His Wikipedia,
Douglas, the full contract.
Douglas, his Wikipedia is 96 pages. Come on. He's a genius. He's got 2 pages for every year of life.
But the point is the Highlands Forum is a capital venture group working for the Department of Defense and the CIA, and they, through DARPA and In-Q-Tel, steal all the patents, because if they have any effect upon national security, it is legal to steal them. Okay, because they just confiscate them. And if the poor inventor wants to do something about it, he goes to jail or pays $10,000 every time he says anything in public about it. That's the law. Okay, we've revealed this a long time ago. Thousands of inventors of America have had suspicious deaths after they had submitted patents which then couldn't be found. Yeah. So where do they go? They go to DARPA, they go to the same capital venture groups, and they then get a cardboard cutout idiot child of someone who is in the system, a child who can't make it otherwise, like a Hunter Biden, like an Elon Musk, like a Mark of the Zuckerbeast. These people are idiots. Who are they? Look who their parents are. Where did Elon Musk get his start? Stanford. What is Stanford? CIA. And then where did they send him after 2 weeks? To UP. Hello, CIA. And then to Wharton. Hello. He didn't pass any of those courses. And if you look at a lot of these people, they don't pass. There's no evidence that Barack Obama, I'd give you his real name, but that could, get a little long. But the point is that he didn't go to any of those schools and he didn't get any grades, and there's no evidence of him ever being there. And even his applications for school were school grants given to someone by a different name, which he never listed as one of his AKAs when he applied for president. So what we're talking about is fraud on the biggest level for who? The biggest people. Bill Gates, complete idiot. His dad is one of the biggest depopulationists on the face of the earth, and his son is out there doing it, doesn't even know what it means.
And his mom worked for IBM as a vice president.
That's how
he was given the basic code.
Yes.
Oh yeah, and they're usually, the parents are controlled operatives, right? Generally, and then it's the son or daughter that ends up kind of the bagman or the front man in these what are still Ponzi schemes. Even these, like the SpaceX Ponzi schemes, all the technocratic Ponzi schemes, where it's just all our taxpayer dollars, or just what they pretend is our taxpayer dollars, just filling their coffers. And I think it's important for people to understand that the worship of Musk or whatever, it's this immature, what technocracy the movement was kind of based on, back in the 1930s, who his grandfather, Joshua Haldeman, was the head of Technocracy Inc. party in Canada. And he was the head of that technocracy movement, which was really a science fiction based movement. It is this pure scientism, should trample everybody's rights. And we're going to create every imaginable amazing thing in the world under this notion that it's going to make your life better. But really, it's just for power and control. And I think it's important to understand that he has both sides of that aisle going on, and in his father's life, I think there's a lot more to come out there, which I'm sure you all are going to reveal at some point, and I'm excited to hear. But we do know this very strange fact that his father married his wife's daughter. We do know
his second wife's.
Yeah, his second wife's
he had
daughter.
A child by his second wife's daughter.
Exactly. And this is exactly what you were describing before, Douglas, and what's called out so much. I was just reading it in Corinthians, this morning. The sexual deviance of these people and how they're captured, and just something as simple, it's not simple, it's expansive, but of the Epstein operation, right? And how it's led to this, it's led to the gene editing genocide that we're witnessing now, the total controlled operatives that are all these scientists became. All of this money from all of these disgusting cartel activities being fed into this scientism machine for all of these biolabs in Ukraine. And we're going to wrap up here as we approach an hour.
Can I interrupt you?
Let me just say one more thing before you do, that I want to get to Ukraine, and I want to talk I want that to be kind of, we can end up on that. But yes, now go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, let's talk about patents. We've
Oh yes,
mentioned that
yes,
already.
yes, please.
But Jay Leno interviewed Elon Musk a couple of months ago, and it's all over the news with CNBC. And specifically, he talked to Musk about patents. And just probably in an unguarded moment, Musk said that he thought patents were for the weak, because Jay had asked him, with all these rockets you're building, or did you patent these? And then just instinctively, Musk said, patents are for the weak. And then he went on to say, most patents are BS. And that's a quote. Both of those are quotes. And Jay was kind of taken aback, and then he probably felt the need to explain himself. So he talked about how patents were really landmines in the area of innovation, and therefore, by the way, that's exactly the opposite of what patents really are. But I digress. So what we saw in that very 27-second clip was Elon Musk admit that he was a criminal, and that he was using other people's intellectual property without paying for it. And so then we had some people that dug a little deeper, and we found, indeed, SpaceX has not filed for any patents. But Tesla, for example, has filed almost 1,200 patents for the car. So here we have total hypocrisy. He's gaslighting the public by saying patents are for the weak. He's mimicking the whole open source argument. But what, as a patent holder and somebody who invested $20 million in inventing something, what he's saying is very convenient, because then he can just step in and steal it without any conscience that he's doing anything wrong whenever he feels like it. But when he wants to use the patent system to protect his little car company, he's right there, by the way. 2 days before he said that to Jay Leno, he was issued a Tesla patent for manifold devices on the car. 2 days before.
Right.
So what a total hypocrite.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't get a chance to bash Klaus Schwab, or as I like to call him, Clown Slob, because his daddy was an award-winning Nazi. He is an ignorant dude. Read his books. His books are like, oh, I'm declaring a new industrial revolution. Oh, you yourself. Why? Because your family's into robotics. Your family owns Escher Weiss. Your family, the Slavs, have been literally criminal German Nazis moved into Switzerland as part of that inner group that really is still a corporatocracy, a lineage of corporatocracy of banking families. And he is one of the worst, because what he's actually saying is the worst of all Luciferic things. I want you to believe me that our inside group here is telling everyone what's going to happen next. And by the way, I own the companies that we're pointing at that should get the business. Yeah. It's so disgusting. I can't believe anyone would ever even go to such a meeting. But if they do, they are worshiping the 7 deadly sins.
They are.
Well,
this is a demon cult.
And let me expand on that just a bit. A couple things. A great expose of Schwab in Davos Man, the book Davos Man, where they really lay out just what again another Ponzi scheme that Davos is. He created it out of thin air, basically told to do so by Kissinger and et al. And to create this cabal, and that he has a foundation that's a nonprofit that's runs back and forth between him and his wife, and all the money's just laundered through, and that he made this fortune just on this grift on creating Davos. Right. And he has no other claim to fame. He has no other expertise. Just because he went to Harvard doesn't mean he knows nothing, And so this is all.
Well, he just attended a management course at Harvard. That was the extent of that.
Exactly. Well,
that's where he met Kissinger.
He's a cartel organizer, is what he is. He's basically a hotel manager for this crowd to come together and party and how decide how they're going to create our demise. And what you said about the 7 deadly sins. What's happening alongside Davos this year is a cryptocurrency big giant party fest, okay, that's being organized by Brock Pierce, okay, the pedophile arrested by Interpol back in 2002, child actor who used to run Tether, okay, that they think is probably a giant, bigger Ponzi scheme than FTX was, like on steroids. And now he is in charge of Bitcoin, Bitcoin exchange, or I'm spacing on it right now, but basically proven to be just another one of these cartel Babylon criminals running this massive hedonistic party to celebrate how they're going to put us all into CBDCs and control, our every purchase, and with the social credit score system, et cetera, on this gaming platform style blockchain.
They want the Tower of Babel.
They're making it, and it's an invisible, but it's there. It's hurting us, right? Just like that shot. So I'm going to wrap up here now that we're at an hour, but I wanted to end with Ukraine if we could. And those are all incredible stuff about Musk, and I'm excited to get more into what's going to be coming from you all around him. So much more to say about that, but I wanted to. You had alluded before, Douglas, and we'll see if you want to go there. But this issue of Ukraine, as you spoke of earlier, both of you, about how the Solomon's gold and the banking cartels moving into that area, the mistakenly calling it the Khazarian mafia or whatever, but it's more about this Radonite.
Well, that's a piece of the story. The Khazarians are a piece of the story. They just aren't the center of it.
Exactly. And that's the mistake there. But there is this obsession with that area, and now of course we're seeing that played out in this war. And this grab, they're putting a kingdom in there for a reason. And I think it's to be at the center of this military transhumanist technocracy thing, right? As it consolidates power. But Douglas, you had said that somebody had told you that it's meant to be sort of a branch of Israel north. And I was wondering if you would expand on that a little bit. This is, I believe, who they called the King of the Jews. And is this ringing a bell, or am I out in the air here?
Yes, that is exactly
what Ukraine is. I mean, Zelensky's going with Larry Fink in a couple days at Davos to plan how they're going to rebuild Ukraine, right?
By the way, Zelensky's got a 71-page Wikipedia.
Well, they love pornography, so that would have taken up about half of his entry, because his life has been mostly focused on pornography. But yes, they want to divide Ukraine in half, give half to Russia, and give half to NATO, basically. And yes, that was Netanyahu had said, Bibi Netanyahu, along with Zelensky, that Ukraine was becoming a new apartheid. It was becoming basically the same thing happening in Israel. Now, what is that truly about? Is that really about the Hebrews? Yes, this is about oil. I mean, actually, I said this when it all started, but this all started a long, long time ago. It started with Burisma and Hunter Biden entering Burisma along with Cofer Black and along with Hines. Those three people, children of corrupt politicians, basically. Cofer Black is actually Mitt Romney's number one guy. But basically, it's the oil, okay? It's all about oil, and these are still about the oil pipelines. For a long time, most wars are all about that. This could be the last one about that, because we've got to see through basically the smokescreen. We got to see behind the curtain and realize that, look, we were 100% oil independent. Biden, the first thing he did, he went to 27% of our oil was then bought from Russia. One of the first things he did, he closed down our pipelines and went to 27% of our oil came from Russia. Hello? That's why, because he'd already received payments. His son had already received billions of dollars in payments for these things. This was long planned. It had been planned for the time of Hillary Clinton to go in to finish basically the pipeline wars, because we're essentially, according to the science, we're running out of oil, and they're going to go to methane, or they'll go to other different sources. Hydrogen,
which is incorrect,
would be the best. Of course, it's incorrect. The earth produces oil. It isn't nonsense that they're deposits. But the point is this is an oil war, and it's all about, we can go into look at Nord Stream 1 and 2. One of them got blown up. The other one got turned off by who? The British and the Americans turned that Nord Stream 2 off. And then they blew up Nord Stream 1. Why? to start a fake war. The British have already declared mobilization against Russia. Poland has now, they've all defied NATO, and they've sent in weapons of war into Ukraine. And that's it. The war has already began. There's no stopping it. And that was, remember, the original incursions into Ukraine, besides in the Donbass, which were asked for after the election, were British commandos into Russia, blowing up power plants and pipelines. Remember, that's the war. That's how it started.
The City of London.
Yeah, the City of London. In cutout, we could even name the group. But not in cutout, kinetic. But the point is that Donbass and what was happening there was a continuing war since the time of Petro Poroshenko. It's still a continuing war. It's one of the worst wars ever of a ruler bombing his own people. No one wants to talk about the hundreds of thousands of people that Zelensky has killed of his own people. No one wants to tell any of the truth on either side. So when you talk about Ukraine, I get a little worked up because Antifa is nothing more than the party of the regions, which came from Ukraine. And who was it that gave the Heil Hitler the Nazi sign when he was there receiving their highest award? Joe Biden. And who was standing right next to him? John McCain. Okay, they started both of the color revolutions along with George Soros. They have controlled that as the country of the greatest fraud, the greatest money laundering country in human history. And now, $147 billion later, no one seems to question it, but they're really willing to fly a flag of basically a pornographer on their front lawn and give up their tax dollars to support a war, because the war has already began. The war has began with the oil, and it's not going to change. Trump had already got us completely free of any oil of any other country, and we were actually exporting oil. That shows the fraudulent nature of all that's going on in Ukraine, just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing what we're seeing is this classic good versus evil conflict. Now that we are identified this Babylonian Radhanite banker cult as a religion, what we see them doing right now is attacking Orthodox Christianity, which is part and parcel of the life of the Ukraine and Russia going back over 1,000 years. And so the Orthodox are standing in his way. And I think that's why he's got to clean them out and then apartheid it. Interesting, that's a South African word, given that we're seeing all these connections with South Africa. And by the way, one of them we didn't mention earlier with Klaus Schwab is all that nuclear activity that his father was engaged in with the Nazis was actually carried out in South Africa.
Very interesting. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So if we look, I think I agree with you about the oil and about everything. Ukraine has been probably one of the prime examples of, we look at what is Cartel Babylon and all of their specialties, whether it's the biowarfare, it's the stealing of the resources, it's the killing of their own people, it's the total massive amounts of sexual slavery going on during this whole evacuation of Ukraine, huge amounts of orphanages, laundering money through the Humpty Dumpty Institute involved, all of this, taxpayer dollars going there. And then, of course, there is, again, the technocratic transhumanism and this one world government situation that they're trying to push through the recreation of Ukraine. I think it's really important because we see them, we see Zelensky giving millions of acres of farmland, leasing it to Gates, to Cargill, to Monsanto Bayer, that they're going to do the new food there. They're going to do the new vaccine and injected food, grown into the vegetables and into what little meat they give us in the new planet diet they're creating. But that, I think, is what they're going to do. The vertical farming, the real specializing in this technocratic mechanisms, AI run mechanisms that they're going to then force upon the rest of the world, and have Ukraine be really rebuilt in that image of the beast, right? And be an example, a shining pinnacle example of the beast system that we're all going to be forced into if they get their way.
Well, by the way, we need to remind folks that when the Radhanites in Babylon started sensing that these Muslim Turks, called Seljuk Turks, were starting to make their move into the Middle East, they began their work to move their operation to Europe. And they also, at the same time, opened up a northern route for the Silk Road out to the trade routes in Europe. And that's where they made the deal with the Khazarians, so that the Khazarians would become this Jewish northern route. But then from there, the routes are very clear now. They moved from over the Caspian Sea up through what is Crimea, up through Kiev, across to a town on the border with Poland called Chemish, which I've actually been to and actually booked outdoor gospel concerts in, by the way, but I digress. And then we moved on to Krakow, and then into northern Germany. So this whole area of conflict right now is thoroughly Babylonian Radhanite in origin. And all the DNA haplographic studies are proving this, that the Khazarians and the Babylonian Radhanites are part of the blood of certain people within the Ukraine.
Oh, that is just a great way to round this up. Perfect, perfect. Thank you, Michael. That's awesome. Oh, wow, I love that. Makes so much sense. It's another one of those self-evident things, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's amazing. And so we really are going to round it up here. Does any last words, or is there hope? What do we do? Just a little rounding up at the end here as we move on. We'll catch you again in episode 5.
My last word is, who destroyed the Tower of Babel? That's a question, I guess. It was God. And so no matter how centralized or how successful these are, we always can rely on God to stop the evil of these demons.
Awesome. Awesome. Absolutely. That is the truth. And Douglas, how would you like to end up here?
Well, the 7 deadly sins may rule on the earth, but the 7 heavenly virtues will always win the long run. It's only in the short run that evil has any power. So I'm 100% convinced that virtue shall win over the day.
And how did Jesus deal with the demons? He said, "Get thee behind me." And I think we all have to do that.
We do. It's so important. It's so important. Obedience and love, right? Obedience to God. And so we move on from here, folks. We're fighting this. We are definitely warriors for the Prince of Peace here, doing the work. And these two
Well,
are
you
doing
keep
the
pounding,
heavy.
sister.
Yeah, absolutely. I will. And you all are doing the heavy lifting there. And I so appreciate you coming on the show. Looking forward to the next episode. And just the very best to you both. And the very best to everyone
Same
out
to
there.
you.
All right,
Thank you,
folks.
Free.
You are free. We'll see you next time.